Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
The presidency isn't the only office being sought in November. U.S. House and Senate seats are also at stake. My next guest is running for U.S. Senate in New York against longtime Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer. She's a former Supreme Court clerk for Justice Clarence Thomas and a judicial expert. She joins me to discuss the current and future makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court, what it could look like soon, and where the Catholic leadership has been during this election season. Please welcome back to the program, Wendy Long. Wendy, thanks for being here.
Raymond, it's great to be with you.
We should say right away, we did invite Senator Schumer to appear on the program as well. Our request was not granted. I want to start with a couple of bites. This will give both you as well as our viewers a sense of where these presidential candidates stand in regards to the life issue. Watch.
As far as Planned Parenthood is concerned, I'm pro-life. I'm totally against abortion having to do with Planned Parenthood. I would defund it because of the abortion factor.
We need to stand up for access to affordable contraception without interference from politicians or employers. And it is worth saying, again, defending women's health means defending access to abortion.
Wendy Long, where have the Catholic voices, the bishops, been this election season? It seems like this issue is really on the back burner, even among Catholics. You don't hear anybody talking about it. What's happened this season?
It does seem that way, Raymond, in terms of the church hierarchy, in terms of the media. But I'll tell you, during the 40 Days for Life, I go all around New York State. There are faithful people outside Planned Parenthood clinics praying, protesting peacefully. It's amazing, but you don't hear anything about it. And if you go to the website of the Archdiocese of New York, you don't even see the abortion issue mentioned when it comes to the presidency and my race for the United States Senate, the only other statewide race in New York besides the presidency. It's just not even mentioned.
Has the Cardinal met with you, Cardinal Dolan?
He has not. Sadly, so far we've not been able to get a meeting with him. I've requested a meeting, but we're getting the feedback that he's not really interested in getting involved in politics. And so it's a little bit puzzling to me, and it's kind of sad because I think, you know, one of the primary virtues that the church touts is dialogue. We want to have a dialogue. And also, I'm a convert to Catholicism, and I'm kind of all in this for what we believe, which I think is totally consistent with the U.S. Constitution. And we know that our opponents, Chuck Schumer and Hillary Clinton, are all in for Planned Parenthood and for abortion up until the moment of birth. And I'm just really puzzled by why we can't even meet with the Cardinal.
Now, both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are invited to the Al Smith dinner this year. Now, this is the premier political/Catholic event of the season. Happens in the middle of October, or late October, just before the election. The predecessors of Cardinal Dolan, Cardinal Egan, Cardinal O'Connor, they refused to invite the presidential candidates to their Al Smith dinners because they thought it would give a platform to candidates opposed to church teaching, and they couldn't support that. Cardinal Dolan has decided, last time he had President Obama attend, then candidate Obama, and now he's having Hillary Clinton appear. Your thoughts on this as a pro-life Catholic candidate?
Well, it's sad. And, you know, I ran also in 2012. I've never held public office, but I felt so strongly about the wrong direction of our country that I was a citizen candidate 4 years ago. I was told at that time there was no room for me at the Al Smith dinner, even though I was the only statewide candidate besides Mitt Romney on the ballot.
But Chuck Schumer, your opponent, and Mayor de Blasio were the two featured speakers at last year's Al Smith dinner.
I know, I don't really understand it. I can't explain it, Raymond, but I wasn't invited then, and I don't think I'm invited now. I do think it pains me a little bit to see this. I mean, I know Cardinal Dolan believes in charity and in friendship, and we have to respect people with whom we disagree. But the disagreements that we have now with our political opponents go to the fundamental issues of human dignity and human life. And I fear that when we put those on what appears to be an equal plane, and we laugh and we make jokes, and it seems like everything's just fine, it would be one thing to break bread with people if you were very honest and you took the opportunity to point out the truth to them. But that's not what goes on at the Al Smith dinner.
Yeah. No, it's sort of surprising that that this would go on, because I know there was a lot of criticism last time, and people frankly confused by
Yes.
what the implication, because years ago the bishops made a rule among themselves and for themselves that those who were opposed to church teaching would not be given platforms or special honors in church events or church institutions. Now that rule has been broken all over the place.
Exactly, and the thing is, I think that it's one to be charitable and to exhibit friendship to people with whom you disagree, even on those fundamental issues, is one thing, but to in some way equate them and to put them up on a platform and imply that in some way their views are equal, which are very destructive of human dignity and human life, I think is a big problem, because the church has a teaching function. The church, in all of our great history, has been a great teacher. It was a great teacher to me. It's what led me to the church as a convert.
Let's talk for a moment about the makeup of the Supreme Court, where we stand now, where this court could go depending on who wins the presidency. Give me your sense, if Donald Trump wins, I mean, he's submitted a list of people who he would like to nominate to the Supreme Court. What do you think of that list? Do you buy this idea of kind of parading out your list of potential Supreme Court picks?
Oh my gosh, I think it's incredibly brave and incredibly generous, Raymond. Nobody in the history of our country, no presidential nominee in the history of our country has ever given those names in advance for the people and said, judge me by whom I would nominate to the Supreme Court. It's always, ooh, it's a very tightly held secret and we don't want to expose them to any criticism. He's letting it all hang out and saying, judge me by these people. This is who the people I'd appoint. They're an amazing list of people. I clerked for Justice Clarence Thomas at the Supreme Court, and I have to say, many of those on the list are former clerks of Justice Thomas. Those who aren't, I know to be incredible judges who respect the Constitution, believe in judicial restraint. So I think this was a very brave and bold move on his part.
And if Hillary Clinton wins the presidency, what role do you see, both on the federal, the appellate level, as well as the Supreme Court?
Well, we know absolutely that Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer's #1 goal is to pack the Supreme Court and the federal appellate courts and the federal trial courts with as many left-wing, what they call progressives, who are liberal judicial activists who will just implement their Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer's political and social policies without regard to the Constitution. That is their goal, because they know they don't have a majority of the American people behind them. This is the quick, fast route to implementing all of their social
How did we
policies.
get to this point, Wendy Long, where you have such an ideological split? Justices should be fair-minded, blind interpreters of the Constitution. How did we get to this point where we packed it with ideological servants rather than constitutional ones?
Well, there was only one attempt prior when FDR tried to pack the court for the New Deal, but really this latest era began after JFK, who appointed Byron White, who was against Roe v. Wade. This latest era began really in the 70s, and it was something about the liberals in this country decided, they invented this thing called the living Constitution. And that means the Constitution doesn't mean the words written on paper. It doesn't mean the principles the country was founded on. It means whatever a bunch of judges decide it should mean. And they can interpret it any way they want. And the way they want to interpret it is the way, you know, the liberal intelligentsia, the academics, the editorial page of the New York Times decide they want to interpret it. And it's just a piece of Play-Doh, really. And there are no strictures on the Supreme Court under that.
Before I let you go, you support term limits.
Yes.
Why? And you would hold yourself subject to term limits should you win this office as Senator of New York.
I feel strongly about that, Raymond. I think one of the biggest problems we have right now, and all of our other problems are traceable to this, is this professional political class that's entrenched itself in Washington. And I think the founders didn't write term limits into the Constitution because they could not foresee what we have now. Think about the founders. They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. These were people of means, people of learning, and they put it all on the table. Great risk, at great personal risk. And they said, we're risking it all for this country. It didn't enter their minds that their predecessors, the people who would fill their shoes, would do so essentially to climb a ladder of
their
success, to make
successors
money,
would all be-
fame, right, climbers. But that's what we've got now. And so I think that's the reason that we need term limits.
One term or two? What should be the limit? What's the ideal for a senator? You got 6 years term.
Honestly, I think 1 is great, but I'd be willing to go with 2. I've pledged myself to 2. Honestly, I would love to go after 1. And I think, you know, if the one thing, remember Hamilton, the musical? The great song about George Washington and how it was time to go. If George Washington could walk away and say, you know what, you don't need me, there is not a single other person in this government that's so valuable that they can't walk away and we can get somebody else.
Wendy Long, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Ray.
And we taught him how to say goodbye. You Hamilton folks will know what we meant. For more information on Wendy Long and her U.S. Senate run, visit wendylong.com.